my name is Anna. I'm an E6 and this is my video on traction for lower E levels, specifically E1s. I am going to be defining what traction is, what it might look like for your team, and how to get started on it this quarter. For me, traction is defined as anything that is progressing you towards your goals in your venture project. Now, that might mean that it's something that first leads you astray, but gives you information to pivot towards something different. And there are many forms that traction can take. For me, I like to personally classify them into 4 groups, but please keep in mind there can be many other groups and not everything's going to fit into a box. For me, my 4 include idea traction, research traction, prototype traction, and social traction. So the first one, which is idea traction, is that brainstorming vibe that you sometimes get. Maybe you're ideating with your group, maybe you sit down and make a list of everything that needs to be done. All of that type of brainstorming classic ideation is what I consider idea traction. Now, that does not necessarily mean that it's going to be at the beginning. For many people, it goes throughout groups. I know that for my venture, Delivered and Done, I've had several moments where I've actually sat down and thought through what can happen next and really brainstorming it. That is idea traction. The second one is research traction. This is traction that moves you forward from you discovering primary or secondary research. Now, remember that primary and secondary research are vital to any project that you are doing, but are extremely vital for your own personal goals for the project as well. So, for instance, for Delivered and Done, a lot of our research for our traction, especially secondary research, was looking at Instagrams and looking at how other businesses similar to us ran and taking notes from that. We also looked at the database to see how many out-of-state college students there were, to see how many people lived away from their family. All of those statistics were extraordinarily important to all of our business decisions. And that moved us forward in our traction. The third one is prototype traction. That is, for me at least, the most tangible traction, and if you're creating a physical product, it might feel easier and seem easier to see that type of traction develop. For Delivered and Done, which gives care packages to college students from their families while they're away from home, I do a lot of prototype traction, from figuring out what type of box fits best to figuring out each and every item that goes in each and every box. It's one of the more simple tasks for me because I'm not relying necessarily on going out and finding research, although I definitely do use research to influence those decisions. It feels more tangible because you can see it getting done. The fourth one, which might not come up in your first quarter as much, but is still super important to consider, is social traction. This could also be referred to in my head as marketing traction. Social traction is pretty much how are you getting the word out there? How are people understanding, knowing, and receiving your business or venture? Again, for Delivered and Done, we looked at several different Instagram accounts. We launched our Facebook and Instagram, as well as our website, and we tracked how many people were liking and commenting and wanting to message us. This actually works alongside with research traction a lot of times, and for us that meant putting out a survey, figuring out who had heard about Delivered and Done and what their perception of that type of business was. So now that you know those 4 types that I personally use, how are you going to get started on the traction for this quarter? Well, if you're an E1, you should definitely go check out the POA video, Plan of Action. And that will tell you everything you need to know about plans of action, which are definitely by far what we use the most in entrepreneurship. Those will help you set team goals and standards for what you want to achieve this quarter. If you are an E1, therefore you are working with a team, you're going to also want to check out some sort of social online component for you and your team. I personally love Trello. It's free to use, and you and your team can organize your POA onto there pretty swiftly, as well as assign roles, check things off. It's super great for all of that. Finally, you're going to be wanting to check out the opportunity orientation video, and that will tell you everything you need to know about seeking opportunity. That is what somebody who is wanting to run a business, who is wanting to be an entrepreneur, needs to be constantly doing. For Delivered and Done in particular, there is not a day that goes by that I am not thinking about that venture project. Maybe I'm not making any scene action towards it, but it's always in the back of my head. If I'm walking through the store, if I notice something, if I see, that might be good, this holiday's coming up, somebody mentioned this, I'm noticing this sort of trend on Facebook right now, or on Instagram, or on Twitter, like, I need to be in the know so that I can plan my business accordingly. That is what you need to be doing with your venture. Once you know what your project is, whether or not it's a social action, a physical product, or something online, it needs to speak to you constantly. Whether or not that's setting a reminder in your phone or just texting your friends about it, just keep it in the back of your mind. It makes it so much easier because, sitting in the shower is where you get your best thoughts. For me, it's going on long walks. It's all of this type of stuff that you're not going to get from just sitting down and having meetings. So, now that you have all of this information, I'm going to leave you with one final thought, which is how you're going to present this traction in your pitch. So, presenting the traction in the pitch, you don't want to outline every single detail. You don't want to outline every single meeting. That is reserved for your learning journey video. For your traction, just highlight the main points. Did you pivot majorly? What super important information did you find out throughout the quarter that made you change your course or keep on course and remind you of your viewpoint? We need to know only the major details and how you came to this venture and to this learning experience. So what helped you learn? Did you do a bunch of primary research and therefore you have a more excellent understanding of it? That is super great to include, but no need to include the unnecessary details. So with all of that, please just take a moment and think about where you want to go next and start working on that plan of action.